Hi everyone, I'm Olivia and welcome to my channel Learning with Liv. Today we're doing something very exciting and I'm sure you've seen from the title, but today we're learning how to sew a dress from scratch. Now this is probably one of the most complex how-to videos on my channel, but if you love fashion or crafty things and you really just want to learn how to create your own pieces, then I think you'll really enjoy this video. And if you don't and you just want to skip to the grand reveal, then that's okay too. I'll pop a timestamp in here for you. So the first thing you need to do is choose a pattern. And obviously you want to choose a pattern that's appealing to you and suits your style and aesthetic. I personally love the classic vintage style of dresses, and the patterns that really catered to this style were Vogue patterns. Now this brand has very easy and easy level patterns to choose from, which is indicated on the back just here. And so I chose Vogue pattern V9076 in the size 6 to 14. And this is an important thing to note. Make sure you choose a pattern in your size because otherwise it's going to be harder to use when you measure and cut your material. So I'm going to try and tackle C design, but as you can see they're all extremely similar and there are so many different brands of patterns that you can choose from. But this one was just the most appealing to me. And everything in this video was purchased from Spotlight. So if you really like the things that I've chosen, then you're able to snag all of these items from your nearest Spotlight store. So the next thing you'll need to do is choose the material, and I personally think this is the best part. I brought my beautiful grandma along to Spotlight to help me choose the right kind of material, as my pattern has a flowy full skirt, so the material needs to be lightweight to really bring out this flowy style. And we spent hours wandering all the aisles, and I'm sure we tested almost every single roll in the store, but we ended up finding a winner. Now when deciding how much material you need to cut, I found that it was easier to read the right hand side of the pattern as the sizes are in centimeters and you didn't need to convert anything. We ended up purchasing 3 meters of this fabric just to be sure, which is 122 centimeters in width. We also purchased 2 packets of the 12mm 2 snaps and 1/2 inch half ball buttons. Then we got 1.5 meters of cording or piping braid, which is the small loop that the buttons will thread through to close the dress. And lastly, we got 1.5 meters of woven sew-in interfacing to stiffen and give structure to the yoke, the midriff and the cuffs of the dress. You'll also need a sewing machine, scissors, needles, white cotton or polyester thread. So in total, this particular dress cost $75.50, which I'm really happy about, and I think that's super reasonable for a dress of this style. But that's enough for me. Let's get learning with Liv. So I'm here with my beautiful grandma Blunden, and she's kindly agreed to lend me a much needed helping hand throughout this process. What we're going to start with today is the measuring of my body so we know exactly which size to follow and where the individual elements will sit on my body. So first we need to cut out all of our pieces from the paper pattern, making sure we cut all the required pieces for design C. Pieces like the skirt and cuffs will have a separate cutout for design C, as they're different lengths and widths from design A and B. Then we're going to iron them so they're nice and flat, so when we lay them out on the interfacing, it's easier to see how much room we have to play with. Now we're going to pin all of the pieces that require stiffening, like the yoke, collar, cuffs and midriff sections, to the interfacing and cut along the lines of your particular size, either 6, 8, 10, 12 or 14. So now we have all of our pieces that require interfacing cut out to size. Now we're going to follow the layout of dress C and start with laying our material flat and covering the material with all the cutout pattern pieces. After making sure the grain line of each pattern is facing the same way, pin the patterns to the material and once again cut along the dotted lines of your particular size. Now outlined on the pattern is the number of pieces you'll need to cut out for each shape. And as you can see, we're starting with the bigger sections like the skirt first, with our material doubled over to create identical pieces of the same pattern. So it's the next day, and today we're going to stitch together all of our pieces, and this includes first basting the interfacing to the corresponding pieces of material. And here's an example of what I mean. So this one we've already basted the interfacing to the material, see here the green thread? And this is time consuming, but it's really necessary, and we're going to do this to all of the 10 pieces. And then we're going to join the pieces by tacking them across the top and then sew them together at the shoulders. With a chalk pencil, we're creating a 1 centimeter thick line, which will become our guide when we sew along this join to join all of our pieces together. So now we have sewed together our first piece, which is the yoke front and back, and it looks something like this. Following the same process, we're going to sew the interfacing and material together at the midriff sections to create the back, sides and front of the bodice. Where to put the 1 centimeter wide dotted lines will be indicated on the pattern, so it's easier to mark it on the material itself and then just follow this step each time. So now it extends out like this and we're ready for the next section. Now we're going to pin together the 2 sections that we just sewed, the midriff and the yoke. And we're going to pin them so that the flowers on the material are meeting face to face. So sew them along this join so it opens out to look something like this. Next we're going to cut out 9 pieces of string, all 6 centimeters long, to create the loops for our buttons. And we're going to pin them in place onto the yoke, aligning them to the dots indicated on the paper pattern. And now we're just going to hand stitch them so that they don't move around. Now we're going to fold the left front extension piece in half, turn it inside out and sew along the top, stopping at the blue dot indicated. Once sewn, fold it the right way out so it looks something like this. Now we're going to quickly stitch this to the yoke, but the opposite side to the button loops. Now we're going to cover all the interfacing with the leftover corresponding pieces of material so that it's all hidden in between the 2 layers. We're going to tack this all together and sew it along the joins so that we still maintain the same shape, it's just another layer thick. Now we're going to create some gathering stitches. So we're going to sew 2 lines of longer stitches about 1 centimeter apart, indicated here in blue, along the front of the breast bodice pieces. So now when we pull the thread, it creates nice and even bunching. And now repeat this process with the back bodice piece, and we're going to do this gathering stitch on the bottom of all 3 pieces as well. After that, we're going to stitch the front bodice sections to the back, joining them at the sides first and then the top, and then pinning and sewing it all together with the yoke and midriff sections. Remembering to sew it inside out so that the flowers on the pattern are tucked away on the inside. Here, we're also sewing in between the 2 lines of our gathering stitch to secure in place the desired bunches. Now turn it the right way out, and here we have created the top of the dress. We've created some beautiful gathers at the shoulders and base of the midriff. This is the hardest part all complete, and now we're moving on to the skirt. So first we're going to create a front opening on the 2 front pieces of the skirt, and sew a 1.5 centimeter hem so that we can step into the dress without having to attach a zipper. Now we're going to sew together the two front sections of the skirt, starting at the front opening and going all the way down to the bottom. Like before, we're going to create another gathering stitch at the top of the now sewn together front sections of the skirt, which will sit roughly on your waistline. Now we're going to stitch together the two back sections of the skirt right down the center, followed by stitching the two back skirt pieces to the two front skirt pieces at the sides to create one entire skirt. The next step is the sleeves. Once again, we're going to make a gathering stitch at the top of the sleeves and join the two sides together, leaving 5 centimeters free at the bottom. And it's easier to fold this sleeve in half inside out first and then sew. And we're going to repeat this step for the opposite sleeve as well. On our collar, we're going to pin and iron down a 1 centimeter hem on both pieces along the straighter, longer edge, followed by stitching the two pieces together along the curved edge. Turn the collar the right side out and iron it flat so it's easier to pin onto the top. Now we're going to pin and sew the collar to the neck edge, making sure the flower patterns are facing each other. Now we're going to pin the button loops to the edge of the cuffs, making sure the loops are large enough for the buttons to fit through, and sew these into place. Then we're going to make another gathering stitch at the wrist of the sleeve and pull the thread so that the sleeves fit the same length as the cuffs. Pin together and sew, making sure the pattern sides are again facing the same way. Fold it the right way out and do the same on the other sleeve. Now it's time to cover our buttons, and this is a lot harder than it looks. Now take your piece of material and put the button covering on the center. Put it on top of the red silicone cap and use the yellow topper to push down and secure the material, covering it in place. Cut off the excess material and fold the remainder of the material into itself. Take the button and put it upside down into the red silicone cap, again using the yellow topper to secure it in place, pushing down hard until you feel it click into place. Remove the red silicone and yellow topper and we've just covered our first button. Repeat this process 8 more times so that there's 9 covered buttons in total. Now we're going to tack and sew our top to the skirt, making sure the top of the skirt aligns with the bottom of the top, sewing 1.5 centimeters away from the raw edging. Now we're going to sew on the sleeves to the shoulder section of the top, making sure the flower patterns are again inside out facing each other. Next, we're going to hand sew the buttons to the cuffs on the opposite side of the loops and repeat with the remainder of the buttons onto the bodice, aligning them with the loops on the opposite side. Now hand sew 2 snaps on the front opening of the dress so there's room around the hips to easily step in and out of the dress. And last but not least, sew a 1 centimeter hem around the entirety of the base of the skirt and iron the dress to eliminate any wrinkles for a crisp, clean finish. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and any questions, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. See you next week.